Hello, my name is Kifoi, and on this channel, we talk about microorganisms in the Gikuyu language. Today's video is in English though, and in this video I'll be addressing a question that I've heard from some people about whether I have any tips for learning mother tongue or your vernacular language of interest. For context, me personally, while I was born in Kenya, I was partially brought up outside of Kenya, so these tips will be from that diasporian perspective. And actually, my whole adult life has been outside of Kenya, so that's where I'm coming from here. I've assembled here 4 tips that have helped me in this process. They might be useful to you, and if you have anything to add, please do not hesitate to leave a comment and let me know what tips you might have in addition to these. Tip number 1 is gonna be to find a virtual language class. I've linked some organizations in the description box below, which has a list of teachers who are teaching African indigenous languages or African vernacular languages or mother tongue. In this video, I will use those 3 terms interchangeably, but either way, in the description box, I have a link of people who teach mother tongues and African vernacular languages. I have not used any of them below, so I personally cannot vouch for them, but I do have a friend who is learning Swahili on italki. If you have any favorite apps and services, please comment them in the description box below and I will add them to the resource list. Now you might see this tip and wonder, why can't you just talk to your family? Not everyone has their family with them, and not everyone's family is interested in speaking their mother tongue or speaking their vernacular. So I'm starting with a very general tip because I know that the family option is fairly specific and may not apply to everyone. But virtual language classes are available on the internet and therefore they have wider access, which is why I put that as my first tip. The best way to learn a language is to speak it and to be around people who share that interest so that you can practice it more. In this time of COVID, your best bet is to try and do it virtually. While it isn't as great as being in person, the advantages are that you can connect and learn alongside people who are not in the same geographic location as you. So this increases the chances of you finding people with mutual interests and to find people that will really help you move on along in your goals. So take this time to connect virtually as a plus instead of a minus and find common interest groups that will facilitate conversations in your mother tongue. Oh, and within this same topic, if you happen to be in my audience and you're someone who is fluent in an African indigenous language or in a language that's considered usually like a mother tongue, if you happen to be looking for some side cash, this is actually a really great opportunity for you. There are many language curricula available online, so what you can do is find a couple of them and then model your curriculum based on your favorite kind of organization of those curricula and then assess whether this can be a potential income earning opportunity for you. Many professors and teachers put up class syllabi on their website, so you might just be able to get some pretty great examples of how to teach a language and how to organize a language, and then you can design your own and then you can hop onto the internet and start your side business. And so this way you're going to be providing a service and making income. Tip number 2, to watch talk shows and channels in your mother tongue of interest so that you can train your ear. I realize that there are some languages which are more popular than others, so it might be a bit harder to find some content in some certain languages. Now, I've been recently reading about this idea that linguists call language harmonization. Essentially, it is a way to cluster dialects and languages to find common words that can be condensed into one specific language. So what you can do is look up whether linguists have proposed harmonizing your language with another based on similarities, and then check and see whether that language is more widely spoken. If so, then that is a language that you can probably use to help you train your ear or at least expose yourself to listening to. Please note that the aim here is not to erase your language, but to help you find some resources that will move you closer to understanding your language. Note that my perspective again is from far away in the diaspora, where we often have to rely on digital content and digital materials. Tip number 3, to find a way to connect your language practice to your interests. For example, I am in training to be a scientist, and part of that requires you to talk about science topics clearly. So I am practicing that while also learning how to speak better Gikuyu and Swahili. You might be a makeup artist. You can train people in your vernacular language. Or you might love cars, or books, or cleaning, or you might be an engineer, or whatever your interests might be. You can try and create content in that language, and in so doing, you will practice that language doing something that you already love. Some examples of this that I found in my search are the Kenyan scholar Nanjala Nyabola, who recently wrote a thread about how she recently challenged herself to write in Kiswahili. Now, Kiswahili isn't a vernacular language, it's more a national language for many countries, but the idea here is that this scholar is writing about her subject of expertise in a different language, and in so doing, developing and expanding not only her understanding of the language, but also the depth and breadth of the words in that language. Another example is the rapper Chepkosgei. She is integrating her Kalenjin language in her artistry. My last example for today in this video is this team of computer scientists who have an organization called Masakane, where they're using machine learning and artificial intelligence to translate science articles and to develop scientific terms. And as I close the discussion of tip number 3, I want to end with this quote by the linguist Duncan Okoth Okombo. It is in preparing our languages for enhanced gainful utilization that we develop them, paradoxically, so they may develop us. And so this is a really interesting concept because it kind of captures the fact that these languages that we speak are plastic, they are evolving, they are growing. And so when we spend time to talk about our different areas of expertise, then we are able to expand them so that they can include all of these different concepts and ideas. So in taking the time to talk about your specific area of interest, you are developing your vernacular. So not only are you developing yourself and your understanding of your vernacular, but you're also contributing to the growth and expansion of that language itself. And so that's pretty cool, isn't it? And now my last tip number 4. So I know that life in the diaspora as an immigrant is equal parts privilege and challenge. And one of those challenges is integrating into your new culture. And there are many people who believe that part of integration is getting rid of your mother tongue, or the idea that too many languages is bad for your kid. However, scholars and researchers are discovering that this idea that teaching children multiple languages is somehow detrimental is actually incorrect. And so, tip number 4 is, if you happen to be a diaspora parent, teach your kids your mother tongue. It'll help you remember it, and you will be able to teach them so that they are also able to speak it. In preparing for this video, I found this article that does a decent summary of a bunch of research that shows some potential benefits of bilingual education. Now, the article title says potential because anytime you're making conclusions based on research findings, you have to remember that when a researcher is designing an experiment, it is usually conducted in a very specific, defined way. Therefore, when trying to make big conclusions that are relevant for everyone, it's a bit hard to say for certain, but if the data is sound, what this type of experimental setup can do is that it can suggest some very relevant and valid themes. And so the research that is cited in this article suggests benefits like this idea of executive function. So apparently, if you speak 2 different languages, you have to learn where to speak one language and then where to speak the other, right? And so in order to do that well, you kind of have to be able to assign tasks appropriately, and apparently that ability falls under a skill called inhibition and task switching. And these type of skills, knowing when to stop one language, when to start, and being able to compartmentalize who you speak to and when, etc., they fall under a family of skills called executive function. And so apparently people who are bilingual have a heightened ability. Potential brain benefit number 2. One of the definitions of empathy is an ability to read social cues to try and gain perspective on where someone else might be. According to this article, bilingual children as young as age 3 have demonstrated higher scores on tests of perspective taking and something called theory of mind. So theory of mind is a social cognitive skill which involves the ability to think about mental states, both yours and those of others. And so apparently bilingual children are able to do this better and therefore able to possibly be more empathetic. Number 3 potential brain benefit is this idea of better reading. So in this article, the author cites a study where 10% of students in a public school or a set of public schools in Oregon were assigned to dual language classrooms that offered instruction in Spanish, Japanese, or Mandarin in addition to English. And so a professor then conducted a 4-year trial and found that these dual language students outperformed their peers in English reading skills. Potential benefit number 4 is in the area of school performance and reading. So these data come from studies that covered 6 states and 37 school districts. And what the researchers found was that when they compared the performance of bilingual students to students in English-only classrooms, what they observed is that the dual language students had higher test scores and seemed to be happier in school. They also had better attendance, fewer behavioral problems, and higher parent involvement. Potential brain benefit number 5, diversity and integration. What the researchers in the cited study found was that dual language classrooms were typically made of native English speakers and recent immigrants, thereby more ethnically and socioeconomically balanced. What they found here was that this was important to help kids of all backgrounds gain comfort with diversity in different cultures. Several of the researchers also said how in bilingual education scenarios, non-English dominant students and their families felt like their whole language was heard and valued, compared with a classroom where they had to discard their home language at the door in favor of English. Now this video isn't about school and bilingual education, but what I did learn from this point is that teaching your child your mother tongue is a really useful tool to help your child learn how to navigate a diverse world which is not a monolith. It is a really key asset to navigate different ways of knowledge and different ways of doing things. Alright, so our very last one now, possible brain benefit number 6 is protection against cognitive decline and dementia. So this article cites a Canadian study which looked at patients with Alzheimer's. When assessed via cognitive tests and daily functioning tests, a group of bilingual adults performed at the same level as a group of monolingual adults. However, when the researchers looked at the two groups' brains, they found more brain atrophy or more brain damage in the bilingual group. And so what this kind of says is that the adults who spoke 2 languages were able to still perform even with greater degrees of brain damage. So this seems to imply that the bilingual adults somehow were protected against the effects of decline. Now this is only one study, so we can't necessarily say for certain, but conclusions of the study point us toward potential truths. And so that is valuable. And with that, you have my 4 tips to help you learn your mother tongue. Just to recap, the first is to invest in virtual language classes. The second is to watch movies, shows, listen to radio in your vernacular or indigenous language. The third is to find some way to connect your language learning journey to your regular life interests and expertise. Number 4, if you are a diaspora parent, teach your kids your vernacular language. There are some documented brain benefits to being a bilingual person. Do you have any tips to help people learn their mother tongues or their vernacular languages? If so, please add them in the comments below. If you have any questions, also please put them in the comments below. I will do my best to answer. If you've made it so far in this video and not subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. And I will see y'all in the next video. Take care and stay safe. Bye.